So I was quite surprised. Not everybody knows this, maybe, but the author of Bitcoin is still anonymous. He published the paper in 2008. The system went live in 2009. There are many speculations why he still is anonymous. Something he was afraid central banks are gonna get him. Some think that it's because the system was designed to trade drugs from the start. Anyway, the interesting thing is there are 600 bitcoins left for the inventor, but in the code there is an if that prevents them from being spent. So in a way, many people think that Satoshi, if he leaves, is very rich, but he cannot use these bitcoins without an update. So I thought that might be interesting. So initially, Bitcoin was pushed, the first cryptocurrency was pushed through international money transfers and, well, drug trade, mostly. International money transfers above 15,000 euro are very problematic. Usually they take a lot of time. Money is often blocked for months. So people found, well, we can send bitcoins and it goes faster. And even when Bitcoin was worth very little, you could just send a lot of bitcoins and convert them quickly. So the lack of stability, the volatility was, could be alleviated by that. So, what happened here? However, the blockchain technology behind Bitcoin proved to be very cool indeed. And why is it so cool? So you hear many people talking, giving a short elevator pitch about the blockchain. So we hear it's a database. It's going to solve everything in banking. And often people get confused by that. And well, it is sort of a database, but then if it's just a database, it's a very bad one. And we'll get to that in a second. What the blockchain enabled and why it's very, very cool, indeed, it's the first time in human history that we got a technology for many, many parties to reach consensus, even when there's adversaries, when there are adversaries present, which try to disrupt the system, without the need to appoint a central authority or any authority, indeed, without the need of a trusted third party. So basically, in computer science, there's this problem of Byzantine generals, and blockchain, in a way, solves that problem. How many people are familiar with the Byzantine generals' problems? A quick show of hands. Okay. So the problem is basically centered around the story where a few generals have to attack a city, and they can't communicate freely. They can only send messengers which can be intercepted by the enemy. And they have to decide, in the simplest version of the problem, whether all to attack or to retreat. If they don't attack all at once, defeat is imminent. So the problem can be even more complex if some of the generals are traitors. And this problem cannot be solved in the general case in a fixed amount of messages being sent, but we can drive the probability of a consensus between the generals towards one. Okay, the other thing that people often miss, what the blockchain introduced, is a money emission mechanism not tied to a central authority. So we don't need a central bank to emit money. That's very, very new indeed. So central or any bank, any authority that issues money. Money is issued in a decentralized, distributed way. Okay, so no authority. So the dream for the community was mainstream adoption. Mainstream adoption of a cryptocurrency, of blockchain as a contract platform. So now we have this smart contract platform called Ethereum. Anybody heard about Ethereum? All right, most. I think you know too much. My like my lecture is really for beginners. Good. I mean, maybe I should stop giving introductory talks. Some people think about the blockchain as a voting platform, and there's also the durable medium aspect. So anybody here familiar with problems around durable medium? Okay. All right, one person, so all right, something you don't know. All right, so durable medium is basically the need for organizations to store data in a way that can be proven, that is provably unfalsifiable, not forged by the organization itself. There was one famous case where a certain bank changed their changed the deal with their clients, and they just updated the clients via mail that read our new terms sheet. It's on the web page. And one client disagreed and sued the bank, and the bank said, well, you have to, abide to our terms sheet, and it's on our web page. And and the client said, well, but it's your web page. You can change it anytime you want. The bank said, well, we have backups. But then the court asked, okay, so who controls the backups? And the bank said, well, we do. So the court said, well, so whatever was on your web page and in your backups is not a proof. You control it. After that case, many banks and insurance companies want a durable medium. Actually, there's some law requirements for them to store certain information on durable mediums. And blockchain can provide such a durable medium. Medium where the bank or the insurance company Hey. All right. So a medium where the person that writes to the medium cannot change it afterwards, and everybody can prove that something was written and at what time it was written. Quite important. All right. So how is the blockchain ecosystem doing in those? This one died. All right. So what are the problems with the dream? Well, let's see if it works now. Just a second. No, it died. All right, it works now. So what are the problems? One of the problems is the blockchain is really, really slow. Most of the blockchains are. So for Bitcoin, the biggest blockchain so far, it's about 7 transactions a second. Okay, anybody knew that, or obvious to everyone, right? All right, so a quick show of hands, who thinks this is slow? All right, everybody. Anybody can guess how many transactions a second Visa does? Even more. Next guess. Nah, okay. 40,000, and you win, I don't know, something. like a bottle of water maybe. Okay, so Visa does about 40,000 transactions a second. So if any cryptocurrency wants to be mainstream, they need to do as much. So another problem is fear of regulators. So the crypto world is happy to do their little deals off the record, but for big money to be involved, for banks to be involved, they need AML and KYC. So AML is anti-money laundering, and KYC is know your customer. Basically now in most countries, you cannot have an anonymous account at your bank. So you cannot say, hey, hello, this is my password and I want to store money at your organization. They'll have to see your documents. And well, you might want to have some money like cash for various reasons, but for some transactions, KYC and AML is quite good. And well, do the blockchains get that? Well, some blockchains go in the opposite direction. There are things like Zcash, Monero, Zcoin, which try to anonymize the blockchain even further. On the other hand, there are companies that try to provide risk assessment, AML, and KYC services for the blockchain. I happen to work with one of such companies. It's CoinFirm. Really cool guys. I recommend them. By the way, they're doing their ICO right now. AML token is live, I believe. So if you want to help them and invest, go ahead. So blockchains are coming towards the mainstream in that regard too. Okay, there are problems with security. So one problem is botnet mining. There's even this JavaScript company right now. Anybody heard about it? Yeah, CoinHive, right? Yeah, so there's CoinHive right now, and you can just put JavaScript onto your page and they'll mine Monero with it. In a way, that's cool, because if you tell your customers about it, it might be a viable alternative to advertisement. It might be less intrusive. Depends on basically your fan in your computer, right? If you have no fan, probably, and you don't pay a lot for electricity, probably mining Monero is better than having a ton of ads. But of course, there are ad blockers, right? And there is even a miner blocker right now, so we're getting there. Then there's wallet hacking, and when somebody hacks your computer and your phone and transfers the money out of your bank account, you can go to the bank and say, hey, my computer was hacked, I didn't authorize this, and sometimes you can get the money back. In case of cryptocurrencies, you're out of luck. What many cryptocurrencies do about this is basically multi-sign wallet. Anybody heard of multi-sign? Okay, some people. So basically it works like when you do a transaction, you cannot sign it with just one signature, one public and private key pair. You need a few. So for example, you store one pair on your computer, another on your phone. Of course, both your computer and your phone can be taken over, but somebody has to coordinate that. It's more difficult. So it adds a level of security, right? There are also so-called cold wallets. So basically you can prepare a wallet offline and well, store your money there. So that should be hacker-proof for the most part. And then there's smart contract hacking. Anybody heard about the DAO hack? Yes, okay, one person. All right, so on this Ethereum platform, there are smart contracts, which are basically pieces of code where there's embedded logic. You can think of a smart contract as of a vending machine. So basically you put in money into a slot and something happens. And what happens is determined by an algorithm, by how the machine is built. Well, and if the machine has bugs, money can leak out. And that's what happened to Ethereum. And the funny thing is, it was the contract that was hacked was done by the creators of Ethereum. So that's how we basically got the fork between Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. All right, so and there's a big problem that many people, and it depends on the community really. I was on Monday. I was in Berlin, and I feel the Germans really feel about this strongly, more strongly than here in Poland, than people here in Poland. So lack of intrinsic value. So Bitcoin is basically a point system right now, right? It's a cool technology, but it's just a point system. Nobody promises or anything for those points. Those points are pure capitalism. Some say pure value without value. So, well, we could deliberate on what value is, but what the practical implication of value is basically value keeps the volatility low. It keeps the exchange rates stable. Value of real things, like for example breakfasts, is quite stable. Breakfasts are really the hardest backing any currency could have. You know, everybody eats, so the demand for breakfast is great. There are practical problems with breakfast, so they go bad quickly. Problems with storage, and you have to have trusted third parties that promise you those breakfasts. So maybe not breakfasts. People think about gold. We'll see. Well, why is stable value necessary? I mean, you can, if you trade drugs, you can just quickly change to Bitcoin, change back to something like the US dollars. Well, but what about money lending? Huge business, and I know one person who did Bitcoin lending. He had to close down the company for obvious reasons. I think his company is responsible for the highest percentage of defaulted loans ever. At least percentage-wise. But all right. So what is the value currently based on? Well, marketing and brand recognition, obviously. Then there's black market transaction, and cryptocurrencies are good in those. But do you want to base a new financial systems, or that would be the dream? On black market transactions, maybe not. Then there's what many accuse Bitcoin to be a financial pyramid, and the psychology associated with it, right? So I invested, it grew, it must be worth something, but is that real value? Again, I don't know. Then there's infrastructure. So if there's infrastructure, if something is comfortable, if I can pay for coffee comfortably, quickly, more quickly than with cash, say, then that's some value, right? Well, but I couldn't pay for coffee lately, and the transaction fees for example, Bitcoin are so steep now that it would be more than coffee. So not really. What about the equipment used for mining? It must be worth something, right? But mining for things like Bitcoin went to application-specific integrated circuits. So basically, if, say, the hash algorithm is broken in Bitcoin, those chips are basically just heaters. Okay, some people need heat in the winter, so still worth something, but not really as much as now, so it doesn't keep value well. And how many of you heard that Bitcoin forked lately? Like, all right. So what happened to it? Lately it forked to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. What happened to the value? Well, both grew. So unlike stocks, where, for example, if a company pays dividends, so in a way value is split between the dividends and what's remaining in the stock, then the stock value goes down, right? Sort of makes sense here. Both forks. So you had one Bitcoin, now you have one Bitcoin Cash, and both grow in value.
So if you don't believe in free lunch, there's an alarm bell should go off, right? Well, so why are so few cryptocurrencies based on something tangible? Well, value is difficult. To be in the spirit of, remember what was so cool about the blockchain? It's decentralized, no need for trusted third parties. So if we want a resource to back the currency with, we would need to find a decentralized, valuable resource, not dependent on a third party. So that's a difficult problem, right? Okay, back to the problems. So why are cryptocurrencies slow? Let's start with that. Well, there's a single blockchain. So all the transactions from all over the world have to be, by some miner, be put together into a block, which is then, put on top of the blockchain. All right, so in a way it's a centralized, it's a singleton. It's not one, it's one for each miner. Each miner does basically the same job. Okay, so with a single blockchain, I hope formulas don't put you off, right? How many people are afraid of math? Nobody here. Right on, okay. Okay, so basically the speed of a blockchain is block capacity over block time. So for Bitcoin, this is 1 megabyte currently. One transaction is on average 250 bytes. So that gives you about 4,000 transactions per block over block time, which is 10 minutes. So that gives you about 6.999, about 7 transactions a second. So, well, you see this formula and, well, the solution's obvious. We should just take, the block capacity, make it bigger, make the block time smaller, and ta-da, we solve the problem, right? Well, there is this proposal right now for Bitcoin. It's called SegWit 2x or 2x now because SegWit passed already. Well, there's some opposition. Basically, you can, for Bitcoin, you could up it up a little, but you want many miners, right? For the system to be truly decentralized, to have many eyes on the system, you want many miners, and you want all miners to be able to keep up. Basically, what happens to the propagation delay of a block? Because each block, when it's mined, it has to be sent all over the network, right? What happens to the propagation delay? After initial, 20 kilobytes, basically it's the delay is proportional to the size. This is delay over size, right? So that stays flat. So so the bigger the block, the slower the delay. So if we delay too much, we get forks in the chain. Like, do I have I'll show that on a later slide. And if we have forks in the chain, not forks like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, but forks in the blockchain itself, then we're not sure if the block is valid or not. The probability of confirmation is lower with each block, so we have to wait for more blocks to be sure that the transaction is in the blockchain. So not really a solution, right? And then there's the speed of a low spec miner. How fast can he process the transactions? So for example, verifying the signatures. So for the algorithm such as the one used in Bitcoin, about $1,000 PC, 2015 hardware can do about 1,000 verifications per second. So up to 1,000 transactions, dumb transactions, smart contracts make this harder, right? So it's no problem. But still, Visa has 40,000, right? So still we need 40 times as much. Okay, so this is critical for now, all right? So do we have any solutions for that? Do the blockchains go towards enlightenment? Well, we have some solutions. So one is Ghost. So another solution is Bitcoin NG, Ripple, IOTA Tangle, and we happen to propose a solution as well. We at Nebula Network. The solutions of Bitcoin NG and Ripple are basically delegating the verification towards certain super nodes or master nodes. So not everybody verifies everything. We have to have some trust in those super nodes, or in case of Ripple, it's unique nodes and servers. That's what it's called. There's a unique node list and servers. Those unique nodes are servers. Sorry. In case of Bitcoin NG, that's somebody who mines the block for a certain time, for one block time, is the main authority. So it's lottery based. But then again, that doesn't scale that well because it's just we still basically up the parameters, which we talked about. We just say, okay, you guys have faster connections, you have faster hardware, you do the work. So there's still a limit. And Ghost is quite a cool and simple optimization. It works in Ethereum, and that's why Ethereum is basically 15 transactions a second. So almost over double that of Bitcoin, right? And then there's, those are the fundamental solutions. There are also second layer solutions. Who heard about the Lightning Network? Show of hands. Okay, a few. Thanks. So the Lightning Network is the most promising second layer solution. How it basically works is people can establish a secure channel between themselves. So step one is establishing a secure channel, which then doesn't need the blockchain to function. So the basic idea is, imagine an awesome guy and my friend here, Gavo, in the first row. I want to have a secure connection with Gavo. So what we do is we each put 10 coins into the channel. We lock the 10 coins each. And if I want to send 2 coins to Gavo, I send him a digital signed operation which says, hey, from that joint account, you can take 12, I'll only take 8. Then when Gavo wants to send me 4 back, he digitally signs a transaction, sort of, but that transaction doesn't go to the blockchain just yet. That, hey, you can take 8, you can take 12, I take 8, right? So within the limit of those 10 Bitcoins, we can transfer money to each other off the chain. When we're done with those transactions, just the last transaction is sent to the chain, and there's a grace period. So if I would to cheat Gavo, right, and but I would never, you know that, right? All right, so and I send an earlier signature, Gavo still can send the later one, and they're all counted. So basically, within the grace period, where before we retrieve back the Bitcoins from the shared channel, the money is still locked, and there's time for Gavo to send the newer balance, right? So this way we can have there are 2 transactions, one for on the blockchain, one for opening the channel, one for closing the channel, if nobody tries to cheat anyone. So that way, and the transactions are off-chain between me and Gavo. So that's 1-to-1. Now, when we have 1-to-1, we can establish a network. So if I don't have a channel open with, say, my friend Ola over there, but Ola has one open with Gavo and I have one open with Gavo, I can send through Gavo. So that's the basic idea. It requires some additional infrastructure, some nodes which have many channels open. It requires a simple routing protocol that finds how the money can get transferred. It will not always work because sometimes there's just no route with enough money on it for the money to be sent. But basically, if it works, it works awesomely. All right. So let's talk about Ghost for a second. So this is how a classical blockchain looks, and this is those yellow fields. Too bad you can't see it later on this. All right, so basically, if you send blocks too quickly, you get those yellow blocks, which are forks within the blockchain. Two parts of the network found a new block at the same time, and well, they're orphaned. The idea behind Ghost is just join them in. If there are no conflicting transactions in that block and that block, why not just join them again in the next block? Well, we use a full, directed acyclic graph, and that makes us a little faster. So that's the solution used within current Ethereum. Okay, so I'm from Nebula Network, and let's talk about how we do that. And I believe we have the first really scalable blockchain. And why is our blockchain scalable? We look at the problem a little differently. So the basic observation is to have trust. You could have everybody, every miner, look at everything. That's a simple and good model, right? But that doesn't scale. If everybody has to look at everything, every transaction from the world, and we already know there can be over 40,000 transactions a second, not many people will be able to keep up with that. The network won't be able to keep up with that. But what we can do is have the transaction network, so to speak, split up and set the system up in a way where everybody can look at the different parts of the network, any parts they choose, really. So you don't feel cheated. You can look at any parts, or even all parts if you can afford it, but you can look at any parts and verify them. And in our solution, you're motivated, incentivized to look at them. And if you know you have many eyes, which can independently look into any parts of the network, you're basically sure the whole network is covered and you can trust the system, right? And that approach scales. And as far as I know, we're the only team that works in that direction. I might be wrong though. Probably there's something brewing somewhere. Okay, so we do that with a thing we call multi-chain. So basically we have many chains and they're synced. Their hashes, the hashes of the block after some delay are synced into something we call the master chain. Because of course, if they weren't synced, then each chain, the security of it would be smaller. I have a separate presentation about all this. So basically the thing that sort of made us look into that is when we first thought that, well, all the transactions from all over the world have to meet in one block. That must be slow, right? But then, well, you don't want all transactions to be exactly the same speed. You don't need that, right? If you pay at a coffee shop for coffee, you want the transfer to be instantaneous. The line's waiting, your coffee's getting cold. Who likes cold coffee? Nobody? Ice brew? Oh, some ice brew fans here. Okay, all right. And me too. On a hot day, it's awesome. So, but on a cold day, you want your coffee to be warm, right? And if you send money from Poland to Australia, you don't really care if it's 1 hour, 2 hours. Like, usually you don't, right? So, Oops, what happened here? I'm sorry. All right. Sorry. All right, so we just don't make them wait, right? And the geographical, drawing is just a drawing. It can be divided up. The bases can be different, not only geographical. But that we feel that shows the idea quite well. All right, so how about intrinsic value? So to recap, we know the blockchains are some people push the blockchains toward better regulatory insight, AML and KYC. Some people are solving those problems. We know the blockchains are getting faster. How about the intrinsic value problem? Well, there are some solutions in that space too. One solution is stablecoins. So stablecoins is basically some emitted tokens where people promise this token will be worth $1 and I will give you $1 for it. Well, the bad thing about it is they're the central bank in a way in that system, right? So if it turns out they don't have the dollars, well, you're out of luck. Similar thing is with resource-based tokens. One example is 1 gram. So there's this company in the Middle East. They advertised themselves some time ago as the first Sharia compliant coin, cryptocurrency. Well, the Sharia law says money has to be backed by either, guess what? Anybody know? Gold? Gold, right. That's one thing. And there's another one. Goat. Oh, I heard gold. I didn't want to go in that direction, but okay. Well, in a way, goats. No, gold. And the other thing is, we talked about it. Any guesses? Drugs? No. Grain. Close. Okay, so food. So, yeah, remember, the hardest backing, breakfasts. So they religiously believe that money has to have hard backing, and they too believe that breakfast is a hard backing. Actually, bread turns pretty hard after some time, so maybe, Okay, so the problem again. There's a central authority, they emit tokens, and some people say, well, why do you need a blockchain for that? Blockchains are so slow. Just put a, Oracle or MySQL. Oh, MySQL's Oracle too now. Screw that. Okay, Postgre. Put a database in the same safe as your, as your gold, and we're fine. Okay, maybe less secure. Somebody can break in, but you get the point, right? No blockchain really needed. We still, if somebody can break into the safe, we've lost the gold. Okay, and the other, the newest sort of direction is new emission mechanisms. So, okay, as a quick show of hands, how many of you know where new bitcoins come from? Okay. All right, so just to recap, bitcoins are created when new blocks are mined. So basically, when we had this blockchain, by the way, this structure, right, is this drawing makes sense for everybody, right, or not? Okay. So basically, after each block is mined, to incentivize the miner to mine the block, there's a block reward. In Bitcoin, it started, I believe, with 50 Bitcoins, right? Then there are those, after some time, the block rewards gets halved in an event called halving within the Bitcoin network. So now it's, I believe, 12.5, right? Yeah, so was 50, 25, 12.5, and it diminishes towards 0. So that's how we know there's a limited amount of bitcoins. It's 21 million. But it's just a fixed time curve. It's not. It's still not backed really by anything. Okay. So what if we tied the emission mechanism to providing some useful resources, and those resources didn't cross the virtual and real world? Because when there's, you know, breakfast, gold, anything like that, you need somebody to be the trusted third party that says, hey, I'll give you breakfast for that token. Actually, McDonald's should do a cryptocurrency, I think. They have places all over, right? All right, so that is currently attempted by us, and a similar concept is in Filecoin. So when Filecoin builds this huge storage cloud, permanent storage, and for storing information, people get money, and this money is newly created. So basically, the more resources, the more money. So you have the basic economic balance and check. All right, how do we do it? We build a storage and computational cloud, basically cloud platform. We use redundancy for security and reliability, and we encrypt and shred data. We use a sandbox to make sure the code execution is secure. And basically, if we have a distributed cloud and a fast blockchain, we can have people providing useful resources. When we have a fast blockchain, we can do micropayments. When we have micropayments, we can motivate people to stay within the network, because there are some say, everybody heard of BitTorrent, right? But what happens to nodes in BitTorrent network when they got what they wanted? So the new, you know, probably new episode of some Creative Commons license series, like Game of GNU or something. Okay, so basically they turn off, right? They don't provide the resources to the network anymore. So we can pay them to provide the resources. When we have resources, we have value, and we can tie those with an emission mechanism. Oh, again, okay. All right, so a shameless plug. What is Nebula Network? It's three things at once. It's a decentralized democratic cloud platform, it's a cryptocurrency, and it's a lightning fast blockchain. Okay, shameless plug end. So one more dream we talked about is voting platforms and distributed governance. So there is progress in that area too. One early attempt was the DAO, Distributed Autonomous Organization of Ethereum. It sort of failed, but it inspired many others, and one distributed autonomous organization that sort of works, but just for promoting the network is the Dash network. So Dash is in the top 10 cryptocurrencies right now, I believe, and it's growing pretty fast. It has a really awesome community. So basically Dash has small transaction fees. The money from the transaction fees sort of is governed by the community. So they have those super nodes, and super nodes vote on what to spend the money on. Anybody can do a proposal, and then the nodes vote whose proposal wins, and that person gets the money transferred to their address. So it works. And there are some projects that try to do that for everything. So do a distributed governance model for some real things. One of such projects is the awesome Cryptopolis, and Cryptopolis is done by a friend. that joined us today, Alexander, and I'd like to invite him to the stage to talk a little about that.
Hello, my name is Alexander Wawrzyniak. I try to do that short. We're doing second layer blockchain solutions which focus on a decision making. At the moment, most of the decision-making platforms based on blockchain focus on technical aspects of the network. It's very good thing. It's prevent for forking, and however, we think that this technology can do more. For the moment, blockchain solutions like cryptocurrencies and politics are in love and hate relationships, mostly hate, especially the currency part of it. However, it's governments and government institutions look at blockchain as a good part of it and see opportunities, for example, in voting. The new news, which I have to admit shocked me, is that Russian government start to do a voting system based on Ethereum. It's official at the moment, and they start to do for a local solutions in Moscow city. Also, example of political involvement is blockchain is Polish blockchain accelerator. How can it improve voting and political landscape? First thing is open source. Many countries, even if they have even if the voting system is legit, it's hard to prove that. In my opinion, this is why Moscow so early adopts blockchain, because they're quite sure about the result of the voting in opposition of other countries. It's okay. Another thing is transparency. So you can, after the voting, you can check every part of the network. Every vote can be tracked to the single user if you design the network for this purpose. Blockchain and internet voting giving new solutions also to the structure of votes. At the moment we have two basic voting structure. It's a direct democracy. It came from Athens when everybody voted for every question. And this is there is a problem with scaling because it's hard for everybody to know every subject. And there is representative democracy, so like politicians, we choose people who devote the whole time for making decisions. Another option, which was rather theoretical, but the new technologies help us to build that, is a liquid democracy. It's how we call it scalable direct democracy, when you can always vote on a question. However, if you think that you're not that your knowledge is not good enough to make such a decision, you can delegate your vote to another person. It's a very simple idea, but it makes many interesting implications. Even if the person who you delegated vote doesn't feel like, again, that he's the best person to answer it, he can delegate to the specialist in his field. So it gives one circle closer to the theoretically good and competent specialist. So it creates a specialist rather than politicians who need to know every aspect of governing. So this is the aspect of governance, and it can be also done in a very transparent way in companies. As well, profit-driven as non-profit-driven companies can work in open source environment when the questions which they which they are in front of them can be answered by specialists, and they are fully visible. It's at the moment look like complete opposite of value-based information, of company which value is based on information. However, the speed might be the profit or value-driven aspect of this solution. So, in principle, like keeping your patents in a very small circle, very slow down the whole workflow. So I try to be short, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or to anybody.
Applause for Alex. Thanks. All right, so may I add that basically what this liquid democracy model gives you is you can decide at any time you want, and you can decide about everything that you care about. You don't have to trust that the politician you elected will vote like he promised to, but if you don't care or if you're not knowledgeable, you can just delegate, and you can change the delegation at any time. So I think it's pretty awesome, really. So again, good job, Alex. All right, so okay, so that's it. Basically, we're hiring. So if you're a developer, you're not afraid of distributed, cool but difficult algorithms, and you want to help us change the world, talk to me, send me an email. That's my email, or visit our webpage at nebula.network. And well, any questions regarding the blockchain, our project? I hope I didn't bore you too much with basic stuff. The idea here was to go over how the ecosystem is solving many of its problems. Many people think we're in a hype bubble right now, and I, for the most part, agree. The technology is not ready for everything, for prime time, right? But that doesn't mean in the year 2000, people too thought that we're gonna order cars over the internet and we're gonna talk to relatives and everything, and the technology wasn't ready, right? But after a few years, now we do order cars over the internet, right? We just didn't have smartphones back in 2000. We do talk and send pictures of our cats and dogs over the internet, right? So the dream came true, and so will probably the dream of the blockchain. Maybe not this year though, but I think we need to give the technology time. So I'm not saying invest in Bitcoin or Ethereum. Maybe invest in some newer project like, I don't know, Nebula Network. But even if we are in a bubble, the dream, the enlightenment will come. So, so I'm here with a message of hope, really, right? So thank you. You want a mic?
So a message of hope, so I'll plant a message of despair. Do you accept the thought that Bitcoin can be a trap laid on humanity, because we know that in order to sustain this network, we need to mine, and we need to mine a lot. Then we invent newer and newer hardware, ASICs, as you mentioned, that are incapable of doing anything else. Then the difficulty raises, we need to have new hardware, burn more energy to this, and we could get it cheaper. And basically, currently, Bitcoin network consumes more energy than several countries together. And this is going to grow because difficulty will grow. I don't expect answer, but just wanted to ask this question.
Okay, good question, and indeed, I heard it's about 143 terawatts, something like that. More than Iceland, so more than small countries. Total Bitcoin mining network uses more energy than some countries, so not really good for the environment or not really useful. Well, but there, maybe I should have talked about proof of stake, for example. Proof of stake is one of the solutions. So why do we mine at all? That might be the question. Mining is basically, or proof of work mining is a way to prevent a Sybil attack. So when the blocks are mined, each miner takes the transactions from the network, puts them into a block, and tries to sign it. And the miner that signs the transaction should basically be random. But why don't we just pick, by a simple algorithm, some random node from the network? Well, somebody could flood the network with many nodes. And we call that a Sybil attack, right? Who heard of a Sybil attack? Show of hands. Okay, some people. Okay, so Sybil attack is basically when somebody has many impostor nodes, introduces many fake nodes, so to speak, right? So then they raise the probability of them being picked. A Sybil attack might be when somebody, say, has a Twitter or Facebook botnet and gives their post many likes in a competition of likes, right? So imagine a competition where the organizer says, whoever will do a new tagline for a company and gets the most likes wins the competition. If you have a botnet and 1,000 bots click like on your post, you win, right? So you want to prevent that. How do you prevent that in Bitcoin? Well, basically, each miner has to prove they have some valuable resource. What resource can we have? One is computing power. Computing power, electricity, costs. So if you do 1,000 nodes that mine, but they don't have the computing power behind them, they're as good as one node. So basically, it proves you invested some value in the network, and you cannot just scale this attack, right, without adding money, throwing money at the system. So that's how proof of work works. Now, not going into very much detail, proof of stake is based on a very simple observation. If all we need to prevent Sybil attacks is proving that we have value, why instead of burning computational power, we just don't prove that we have a certain amount of the cryptocurrency, right? The cryptocurrency is worth something. So instead of mining, we stake. So we say, hey, I have 1,000 Bitcoins, right? I have the value, I can prove that. So I have a probability proportional to the 1,000 coins that my node will stake the next block. So that's one of the possible solutions. So everybody, or modern blockchains, try to move over to proof of stake, and that should be more ecological. And well, after some time. I disagree. You know, Bitcoin will not vanish. It's Bitcoin was first, and as you know, we talked about what's value based. The first point, remember what it was? Marketing and hype based, basically, right? Huh? Oh, I'm off. Okay, so All right. All right. All right. Here it is. Right. Marketing and brand recognition. So Bitcoin has that, but well, so it's not going away. But more and more people realize Bitcoin's not up to the task, and of course it's the founder. Bitcoin is this foundation. It's the spark, the spark that ignited the whole revolution, right? So I don't want to be very critical of Bitcoin, but it has its limitations, and probably the biggest limitation now is the politics behind it, because who has influence over the network? Well, the miners. And the miners, with proof of work, there is some incentive for the miners to keep the blockchain slow. Why? Because what happens if you have more than those 7 transactions a second, right? There is something called the transaction fee, a voluntary transaction fee, which you give to the miner to prioritize your transaction, right? So the higher the fee, the more probable that the miner will take your transaction. So if the network's slow, you will pay bigger transaction fees because, well, you need to incentivize the miner more, right? So that's why this 2x proposition has such trouble passing, because miners, they don't really want the network to be faster. It's not in their best interest. Well, and that's why, and some miners won't, know that if they block the system, then Bitcoin will lose its lead probably, right? So it's, they have to widen it all in. If they don't start acting quicker, Bitcoin will just become obsolete, in my opinion, right? It will become, it will have collector's value maybe in the future or something like that. But unless something happens where the miners say, new versions, we update the protocol and everybody agrees, then sorry, it can't. Not with 7 transactions a second. It can't. The value of Bitcoin is based mostly now on the premise that it will become a new world currency. With 7 transactions a second, it just can't.
Quite similar to what we have in non-cryptocurrency. I just asked this question to have this discussion because, this is your opinion and why it can be different, and is because I think that in this world of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin will become something that we in normal currencies would call gold standard. So you can have some gold, it has some value, but you won't pay with that because it is so damn hard. You will not pay for your bread with your gold, as you would not for Bitcoin because it is only 7 transactions a second.
All right, that's true, and maybe that's true, but then again, we have to tie that Bitcoin to other faster cryptocurrencies. And the question is how to do this. There's this project called Polkadot, but it ties several blockchains, but mainly to the Ethereum blockchain. Sure, yes.
Tied US dollar to gold.
Mm-hmm.
It worked for some time. Then we stopped it. Then there are some currencies tied to US dollar, and then now we have plenty of currencies tied absolutely to nothing. And this is basically what we see in crypto world as well.
All right, it's not really true that the US dollar or Polish zloty are not tied to anything. I mean, they're IOUs, they're leveraged IOUs basically, but countries make them the official payment medium in that country, and those countries have a territory. They collect taxes. They have enforcement mechanisms. So, for example, in the US, it's the IRS, right? So the US has the IRS, the police, the army, and they collect taxes on that territory in US dollars, which creates demand for US dollars, because if you want to have something within the United States, you need dollars, right?
Demand for US dollars is created by the ability only to pay for oil with US dollars.
That might be true, and it's a complicated geopolitical discussion beyond the scope of this talk. Anyway, I'd argue that national currencies with where there are functioning states have certain backing, hard backing, and that backing is in those, in those enforcement mechanisms. No, not in trust only. It's in those enforcement mechanisms, in those people with the IRS and their guns, and their ability to knock on your door and say, hey, you didn't pay your taxes, and we want your money, and the money has to be in that and that currency, right? So then you have demand for that currency. If you could pay your taxes in different currency, that demand would diminish, of course. It's a monopoly, right? And so a monopoly plus an enforcement mechanism gives you backing in a way. But still, the value can be diluted, and you have to trust the government and the central bank not to dilute the value of the money. And it sort of works in Poland now. The Polish state's doing quite well, right? But look at Zimbabwe, look at Venezuela. In a way, cryptocurrencies, which are very popular in Venezuela right now, keep the system in check as well, right? So if the central banks screw up, well, they know they can't as much anymore because people will just, go crypto. So I hope that answers your question. Any more questions? All right.
Sorry for dominating this. Another on fiat currency. You mentioned that lending Bitcoin leads to trouble and that people get bankrupt. And basically the same stuff goes with fiat, because in Poland we have issue with those who borrowed Swiss francs for real estate. And basically what happened to Swiss franc is double its value against zloty.
Okay, double. Do you know how much Bitcoin changed in that time frame? Okay, so that should give you, a point of reference. Double is relative stability, okay? Like double is okay. Double is okay. Having something change 1000% over a few months is overkill, right? You cannot expect somebody who who has, borrowed $5,000 to give $50,000 back. It's just crazy. So, and some people need to lend money. So if you want to have something that really functions as a currency, you have to solve the stability issue. And we hope we're one of the projects that does that, and we feel we do it the best way. So yeah, come join us. Any more? All right, so thank you.